TVOT.
Y'all ready? Wonderful. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our panel, which is no longer up on screen, so I guess I'll pull it back up myself. So our topic today is Envisioning Cable's Converged Future. Thanks for coming, especially end of the day, where it's between us and beer, if I'm not mistaken, which is always an interesting slot to grab. But hopefully we'll keep this riveting enough for y'all to let time and space pass beyond all means. So we have a great panel. In fact, what I would like to do is I'm just going to run you all down. If you can each give just a really brief intro. I'm Jeremy Toman. I'm currently a consultant at Stage 2, a firm I founded. I've worked with companies like Boxy, Divix, Clicker, and many others in the Converged space. Before that, I was at Sling Media. And before that, I was at Mediabolic. So I've been doing Converged TV since the 2001 when people said that was the year of Converged TV. Of course, at that point, we had just inherited it from people like Liberate and others, with a decade of other experience. But these guys have even more experience than that. So, Richard, why don't you get us started with who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Richard Boinkel. I'm Chief Evangelist for Rovi, which, if you don't know Rovi, we build a lot of guidance technology for a lot of cable operators. We build a lot of guidance technology for a lot of connected TVs and smart set-top boxes. We also do a lot of metadata for things like Pandora, Slacker, Shazam, Spotify. All of those use our metadata. I was Chief Evangelist for Mediabolic before Rovi, and before Mediabolic, Replay TV, and before Replay TV, a little company called TiVo, which I think is further down the way. So I've been at it for a little while too, since 1997, when I started as Chief Evangelist for TiVo.
Hi, I'm James Field from NDS. I'm Director of Technology for our New Initiatives R&D group. I'm based over here in Silicon Valley, but before that I've been working in Europe and Asia for the last 16 years with NDS and affiliated groups from the dawn of digital pay TV, working on rollout with a number of subscribers. I'm now really excited to be looking at emerging technology and obviously the mainstream products that NDS does, which similar in many ways to Rovi: metadata, guides, middleware, conditional access, and DRM.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Eric Martin from BCM. I'm Vice President of Marketing, and what we do is we're the local guys in interactive TV. We've actually developed Clickable TV, which is up and running down in Montgomery, Alabama. We actually enable local broadcasters to make their programming and ads interactive through the cable provider, through the use of eBIF. And we've got a host of other technologies, and I won't bore them with you right now.
Thank you. David Hausman. I'm CEO for Alticast Inc. here in the U.S. We provide middleware solutions for set-top box vendors for True Two-Way, as well as Blu-ray for many of the CE devices that are sold today, as well as providing some guide solutions and applications in many parts of the world. So.
Hi, Sean Knapp. I'm one of the co-founders and CTO of Uyala. We provide a lot of the underlying technology for companies like Bloomberg, Yahoo Japan, News International that really helps them connect their content with their consumers to iOS devices, set-top boxes, as well as, of course, the browser, as well as the data and insight that really helps them actually optimize their distribution and revenue strategy. Prior to that, I led out front-end development teams for Google's primary properties, mostly web search and iGoogle.
I'm Vic O'Drina. I'm CEO of a company called ZV. We have a product called Zinc.tv, and what it's intended to be is a interface that service providers can provide to their customers to help people manage, find, consume over-the-top video, linear video, local content, and the like. So it's really a white label platform that allows, as I said, service providers to give the consumers what they really want, a single point to get to everything. Sorry.
I'm David Sanford. I'm General Manager of TiVo's service provider business in the U.S., so I'm responsible for our relationships and deployment through cable and satellite operators in the U.S.
And hi, I'm Michael Taylor. I head up business development for Active Video Networks. We're a provider of the Cloud TV platform, which enables remote user experiences for managed and over-the-top networks and devices.
Great. So, good team here. What I would love to do is just get everybody with that quick soundbite to start us off. The future is going to be converged. We apparently. One, what do you think people really want? And two, what is the time frame in years, decades, or eons that you think that we will see significant change happen? So just short answers for both. So what do consumers really want in the converged future, and when are we going to see some kind of real change, whatever that might mean to you? Richard, kick us off.
Wow. So what do consumers really want? The ability to touch a device of some kind, whether it's a remote or a touchscreen panel, and find any piece of content anytime. That could be linear content that happens to be airing right now, like a game or a news channel, or a pre-programmed playlist, which is what we call linear TV in the future, I think. Or it could be just any show in history and watch it right at this moment. When will that happen? Well, I think for a lot of people it's happening today. I think for a lot, all 8 of us. And then I think for the mass majority of people, I think that's probably a 5 to 7 year thing. And I think there are some people who will never want that because they were around when television went color and they like it just the way it is.
Thanks. I think similar to some of the things that Richard just said, obviously, it's being able to find what you want to watch, be able to watch it on any device, and be able to do that in the easiest possible way without having to read the manual. I think the user experience is going to be king here, and to do that in a way which makes sense for the ecosystem as well. So I just not go and get it for free from somewhere. And I think it's going to happen. I'd like to see it happening in the next 2, 3, 4 years, but I think it's a problem that's never truly going to be solved.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, those were 2 incredible answers. I'd echo the first. I'd say utility and convenience. That's what consumers are looking for. Consumers are looking for something that's useful, and looking for something that's convenient to their schedule, to their time, and to their needs. Beyond that, I'd echo the same sentiments.
All right, I'm going to start pivoting the question if I hear only agreement. Are we all in agreement? Because I'll switch the question up a little bit for the rest of you.
Well, I think there's a little bit different view that, and sometimes we ask the question the wrong way. It's, what is converged TV? What does the consumer want? And we keep thinking about the consumer, the universe, in the U.S. of 300 million people as one person. And that's certainly not true. So is it really converged to a single item? No. I think that it's more of a individual experience, the consumer wanting the content they want on the device that they want to see it on at the time that they want to see it. And so I'm not sure if it ever becomes converged in the way that we're describing it. It's almost call it diverged from the point of where we're at today, and we're seeing that develop with all the different devices and technologies and the way people use them differently.
Yeah, I guess I can build on top of that a little bit in the sense that user demand and what the users are really looking for is actually evolving over time. Today, it's very much ubiquity, right? I need to be able to connect to my content across multiple devices, primarily because I'm either doing so to connect with reality or actually to disengage with reality. And either way, it's really our job as content and service providers to remove both the physical and cognitive barriers to allowing them to do so. But as soon as we solve that problem, which we're already seeing user expectations evolve towards personalization. Right? I want a personalized experience. I want the content that best suits me, the monetization experience that best suits me in my own individualized world, which is really the promise, I think, of this medium in general. And I think we're going to see that continue to really take the main stage over time.
Vic, I'm going to switch it up for you.
Come on, man. It was all right.
I'm sorry. That's just kind of how I roll. So with everything we see happening in convergence, everything from really smart TVs, browsers on the TVs, apps on your TVs, streaming to your iPad, streaming to your phone, what do you see trending right now that you just think is an utter false vision? What's not going to happen over the next few years? What are we seeing right now that's like, social check-ins, whatever, pick it.
Okay, I like that question too.
All right.
So there's, and I'm
good thing.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that is happening that I think is a wrong turn or wrong direction in this whole space is widgets, or that whole notion of widgets, because it's just another pile of silos. So I now sit down with my iPad and I've got my HBO app, I've got my Netflix app, I've got my this app, I've got my that app, and it's no better than video on demand from most of the MSO's cable systems, right? It's just a bunch of silos where I have to click in and see what HBO has, what Showtime has, whatever. I think that's exactly what people don't want. I think they want a very simple, unified experience. I do think that people, I'm going to cheat and go back to the original question a little bit. I think that people want a unified experience, not a great experience on their TV, a great experience on their set-top box. I think they want a similar, if not identical, experience on everything they touch. they want simplicity, right? To keep it simple, 2 clicks to enjoyment, and let's just get on with watching video, which is what it's really all about.
David, to follow up on that point, I'm keeping going now. Who do you think's doing it nice and simple?
Besides TiVo, you mean?
Yeah, of course, besides TiVo, king of all media. Anyone else who's doing it simple? Who's doing it well?
Well, I think certainly when you look at user experiences and consumption platforms, certainly Apple does a great job in terms of on-demand and a la carte content, on the platforms that they have. I don't think on the television anybody is doing it well. I think we're doing a good job at it. I don't see, certainly from any of the operators that have either deployed their own guides or are using sort of a legacy system, I think they've done a very poor experience there. I think what you're actually seeing happening is that there's a lot of focus now on other platforms, get it to the iPad, TV everywhere, and I think the television is getting neglected, and the reality is the television is probably the most important strategic asset, particularly if you're an operator, and I think there's a huge opportunity to do a much better job there and to tie in all the different content sources with one experience, and I think it's the operators to lose.
So we'll direct that last statement as your question, Michael.
All right, so what question am I answering?
The question
now?
you're answering is this. We've got a TV experience ready for redefinition. We can say this as a certainty. If we all leave it alone long enough, Apple will go off and do it. So pulling them out of the equation for a second, who else is poised to come along and just do it really well?
I think that is a great question. I mean,
Thank you.
I've been working in this, for a long time with a number of these guys, and I remember in '93, Scully did this is $1 trillion industry, and we're still waiting for that, but I think we're all waiting for that next great thing, but I think people want to just watch TV. They want to sit back, they want to watch TV. I agree, widgets are an interesting concept, but it's more for my computer, not for my TV. I think that navigation is going to be key, because what we've seen is on the supply side that, to look at Comcast, for example, hundreds of thousands of assets as they claim, right? And I think they're building to that. The issue becomes, how do you find them? How do I find what I want to watch? Because I don't want to work for my TV. I want my TV to come to me, and I want it to be easy. And it is the, hate to be cliche, but it is the lean back experience, and it needs to be that way.
I think that's a great point. I'm just going to quickly turn to the audience. Is there anyone here, I'm not going to get into a big discussion debate thing, but is there anyone here who thinks that this group's kind of wrong, that widgets are actually the way of the future, content silos on TVs make tons of sense, etc.? Is there someone who's backing that? Because what's interesting is that's what the industry is doing, so somebody's behind it. And we're a lot of that industry right in this room. So is there,
Well, I'm just surprised with the amount of data visualization that exists on the web. That they can't come up with some way to visualize what people are watching at any given time, because you know what people are watching at any given time. Why can't you just color chart it for me? So I don't have to use that linear guide anymore. That's really not relevant in this day and age to search for so much content.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm turning to James. So the question I've got for you is, we've got our vision of what we want. We have a lot of companies bringing a lot of technology into the living rooms to make it all happen, and to headends, etc. Now today we have these set-top boxes. Some are kind of powerful, most aren't. We have some next-gen set-top boxes already in deployment, in development, etc. And then we have an era of connected / smart / Wi-Fi TVs, whatever you feel like calling them. Obviously in the latter, the brains go into the TV set, and it's up to people to make those brains do stuff. In either the former cases, existing STBs or new ones, it's really the cable and service providers who are going to dictate what's happening. Which, you guys are obviously intimate in that space. What are those bets you're going to make? What do you think's happening there that's particularly interesting right now?
Okay, quite a long question, first of all. But I think it's very appropriate. We've got customers out there who've been using the same set-top boxes, which today would be described as DTAs, effectively. They've been in the market for 10 years. They're supporting rich business models. But with a typical tidal swap-out volume of around 5%, it's going to take that's 5% per year. It's going to take a long time to swap out all those boxes, and a massive investment as well. So you're exactly right. We've been trying to work with chipset providers to really raise the bar. And I think it was probably 4 years ago when the first sort of Apple TV appeared on the scene, and and sort of shook the cage of all of the vertical operators and say, hey, look what you can do in the user experience space. And it's taken that long for the chipset guys to sort of get with it and put in hardware graphics into the chipsets. And then we're starting to leverage some of these better user experiences, and that's happening. However, the cost of these boxes has kind of ceased to go down. We've got boxes deployed in Asia which are $25 or something from a myriad of suppliers, but still your high-end boxes with multi-room DVR and HD displays, twin-headed outputs. There's all sorts of boxes there, but they're still in the $100 to $200 range. So most of our operators are also exploring that connected TV space, where they're saying, look, cable card in the US, I mean, it hasn't been a great success, but in other parts in Europe, the Common Interface Plus has been a success in some markets where operators say this is great. It's a bit like the femtocell argument in the telco industry, where if you can get your customers to build your network, that's a fantastic thing. So if you can get your customers to just buy a card at retail, pop it into their TV, it's going to work. However, standards being what standards are, it's going to be some way behind state of the art, and whether you can continue to enable rich business models on these connected devices, and importantly preserve your branding as well, because as we heard earlier on, having this sort of aggregation point for your content, somewhere you know and trust to go to it, is important. And so putting a third-party brand, whether it's a connected TV or a super smart box, in front of your brand as an aggregator has got to be a threat.
Thank you, David. So you guys might be, to use the phrase, you might have been the ones to shake said cage and get these service providers to build the more powerful boxes with your own box back in the late 90s. Where do you guys just did the deal with Comcast recently. Where do you guys see the future of the box versus the connected TV?
So again, I agree completely that the legacy box is going to be out there for some time. However, I think for the operator's best customers, they aren't going to be able to rest on the boxes and the UIs that are out there now. It's a highly competitive environment, so clearly the newer entrants are bringing out much more compelling experiences and functionality because they're bringing out newer devices. So I think that one of the things that's going to be key for operators to do is they're going to need to deploy whole home solutions for their best customers, and these are going to integrate their current linear content and on-demand and a range of call it over-the-top choices, or through the middle choices, our partner Virgin calls them, where they are using their broadband network to open up the device to a range of broadband content in addition to their on-demand. And so that, I think, is going to be a key part of their strategy, because TVs are also not going to get swapped out that quickly. Maybe faster than set-top boxes, but there are going to be a lot of TVs that are not connected TVs. And so for, I think with all the different content choices that consumers have out there, one of the key strategic moves an operator needs to make is to provide a single interface that wraps all that content, so the user isn't switching from input one to their Apple TV to their Roku box to whatever streaming device may be connected. So that's going to be a key part of it. I think the connected TVs will definitely have a role, and that's where you start to look at what are all the other screens in the house where the user is going to want to have access to that content. So the connected TV may be one, the tablets will be another, portable devices. And so there, I think the key is for the operators to find a way to translate that experience to a connected TV environment, to have that be an extension of the experience on the main TV, whether that be an application that frames the UI and the content for the user, and ideally becomes the primary interface they go to on that connected TV.
Michael, and then Sean?
Yeah, excuse me. I'm going to have to slightly disagree on that, in that when we're talking about moving these big, home media centers into the consumers' homes, if the cable operators are going to pay for that, it's going to be a long time coming, because we're talking about a significant capital investment, and they're not going to go to Wall Street and say, I got to swap out $2 billion worth of boxes a year. That's just not going to happen. And so they're getting creative, and they're going to be looking at ways to provide ubiquity branding, so that they can come across the boxes they have in the field. I mean, Comcast alone has 10 million DC-2000s. They have 15 million DTAs, which are one way, by the way. And there has to be a way to provide navigation to these existing boxes and make room for the new boxes that are going to come in, because they're going to have a rolling multi-billion-dollar problem for many years to come. So the key is to figure out a ubiquitous way to provide that branding to every set that's in the box, so that they have the same experience, because the consumer does not want to have to work at going find their content across various boxes. I don't want to go to my iPad to find it one way, go to my TV set in the bedroom to find it another way, and then go to my living room and find it another way. I want it to be the same, and I need that ease of use in order to feel comfortable. Because I think people want to be comfortable with their TV. They don't have to work at it. They do enough work at it during the day.
Totally agree. We all do enough work during the day. I'm staggered still looking at most of the lean back experiences that we see and just the rarity of a true lean back. We have some highly interactive lean forward UIs done at a 10-foot level, but that's a pet peeve of mine. So Sean, quick comment on this, and then we're going to move on to the next topic.
Yeah, I think the comment that I would make is if we look away from the Comcast and the Time Warners and so on, and look at what we see happening is really a wild fragmentation right now in the over-the-top world. Right, we're getting Roku, Vudu, Boxy, and primarily Google really catalyzing a much faster adoption cycle for new hardware, primarily because of price point, and consequently the purchase cycle is much closer to that of mobile devices as opposed to TVs. Right, I still have the same TV I purchased 6 years ago, but I've purchased literally about 8 over-the-top devices since then. And what we're seeing though is, on top of this, there is a very wild fragmentation. And the only one who's actually making a very consolidated bet is actually Google. Right? They're essentially betting on this fragmentation and trying to be the standard operating system on top, because they understand that in this fragmented world, whoever powers the discovery, the connection of consumer to content, is providing a very valuable transaction. And by being that entry point, they're actually the one that's facilitating that connection as a result. Why Apple has been so successful to date.
I would love to get into a debate about that fragmentation point, because you failed to name. In my, it's a good point, but you failed in my eyes. You failed to name LG, Samsung, Sony.
Yes,
and the
they're
guys who have the
all
real
in there
power.
too.
Yeah, I count 15 platforms
boxes
today.
are subsidized. I mean, all those mobile
Sure.
devices, they're all subsidized. That's why it's
Yes.
easy to get to.
All right, so for those who are grabbing the beer afterwards, bring up fragmentation with these guys. But let's move on. Actually, it's a nice segue. David H. Speaking of Google, we have 3 fairly big players in the space of convergence, OTT, etc. Google TV, Apple with their product, and Microsoft, who has Media Room, as well as several other endeavors in the space. What do you think they're doing that's interesting? What do you think they're doing that's very not interesting? Are any of them going to make significant strides? Will they own the fragmentation problem? Google, Apple, Microsoft, what do you think?
So let's go down the row with them, all right? Let's start with Microsoft, because they're always more fun to pick on because it's Microsoft. I think the answer there is they're going to continue to spend a great deal of money. They're going to employ a lot of people, and it's just going to be something on the side. I get to say that after spending about 15 years of messing with them on the cable operator side, working with Microsoft, and they certainly have their agenda. They have some great people, great technologies, but they are certainly missing the mark when it comes to this, and I wish them all the best. As far as Google, that's a little bit more interesting because we certainly work directly with some of the manufacturers that provide the televisions for Google TV. I do wish they are tremendously successful because my revenue line goes up if they are. The first product they came out with, called Gen 1, I think it was a great introduction, probably a little premature what we're looking at as far as user interface. And this kind of keeps coming back to the same topic about, is it a converged device or is it a converged experience? And I think to a certain extent, I think Google is learning in that interface that this is really more about the experience than the device. And so I think they're certainly going to make strides and a great deal of progress. I know we actually had our call last week, and I was joking about it, but I do see them as a driving force going forward. In Apple's world, their business model and where they're headed as far as the device itself and where their revenue is and how they're navigating content is certainly different than the other two. They've not really, shown a strong hand of trying to take world dominance in the control of the content, but certainly with the devices, the iPad 2 for navigation, it seems to be the tool of choice for the box manufacturers, the guide providers, and others to use that because of the tools that are embedded, their SDK. I mean, it is absolutely the fastest, most easiest thing to deal with when you're trying to step back from that grid guide and provide this very robust experience. So, whether they really dominate a content navigation component or whether they're selling a billion extra units because that's what we've converted our 28-button remote control that I can't see in the dark because my eyes are bad because I'm getting old, to something that you can actually use at any place in the house. I think it may be a bigger winner.
Sean, you want to build on those comments?
Sure.
Or vehemently disagree?
No, I think we're tangentially in agreement. So I think that if you look at the underlying trends, right, it's not just the hardware space that's also fragmenting. It's the media space as well, right? We essentially have a large gold rush right now for ownership of the consumer mind share, right? And it's everybody from the Comcast and Time Warners of the world to the Disneys and Warner Brothers of the world to all the new online media properties, and everybody's all vying for the consumer, and each has a different strategy, right? Apple has a very closed environment strategy. They're trying to control their ecosystem, and their success there is I dare to say, intrinsically linked to the success of their hardware business. If you look at Google has a very different strategy, right? They have two bets. They have YouTube, which is a consolidation play, and they have Google TV, which is a fragmentation play, and they actually have both sides covered. Then you have Amazon, which is a little bit in between, and I'd even actually throw in a fourth one there, which is Adobe, who's kind of actually backing into it without actually knowing that they're doing this, in the sense that they pose far less of a risk to the LGs, the Samsungs, and so on of the world as the completely ubiquitous underlying platform, the operating system, for a lot of these smarter devices. And I'd say Adobe actually has the opportunity to be the start screen, and by being the start screen, you actually have the ability to then provide connection between content and consumer. I don't see them employing a strategy like this per se, but I think that certainly poses a lot of opportunities for others in the space. And so I think there will be a battle between those four, and I think actually long-term Google and Adobe are actually best positioned to figure a lot of this out.
I sense a very... Keep it quick, but I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I just think a key part for many people in the room here will be the billing relationship, and the downside you've got there is that neither Google nor Adobe have a billing relationship with any of these customers, whereas the other guys do.
I tend to agree, but they're establishing new billing relationships, very similar to the success models of Netflix and now even actually Hulu, which is a lesser degree. But that's exactly the model that Apple has already established, right? Apple has established a billing relationship, and a very powerful one that says, look, if you don't want to share 30%, go pound sand and find somewhere else to distribute your content. And they've done so to a very large degree of success.
I know, I think the others are doing a great job, don't get me wrong. But there are others worldwide who are looking to emulate the success and just capture those, own the subscriber.
Right. And I'm not saying Google and Adobe are going to figure it out. I'm just saying they're trying to.
I had actually a really fascinating lunch discussion about Adobe coming at this space from a totally different angle, just on much more of the back-end stuff, things that we aren't even really seeing them doing, which should be an interesting company to watch, because they're definitely losing the front-end battle. So that said, you brought up a great point. I look at the iPad. The iPad is almost like the get-out-of-jail-free card for the entire connected TV industry, because as we've all seen, nobody's made anything really good from a consumer perspective. Even Apple, which we'll say would be the top company for user experience, even they know that they haven't quite nailed it. And all of a sudden along comes the magic remote control, and it's like everybody's saying, well, we'll just make a second screen, right? Nobody's bothering with the remote anymore. So great for consumers in a lot of ways, but the second screen obviously brings more to it than that. The second screen is a social experience, it's a content portal, it's a remote, it's all these type of things. Richard, I'd love to hear you give us some thoughts on where you think the second screen fits in down the road.
I think the second screen is far more important than any of us have really given credit to. It's very fun in a group of Silicon Valley super nerds to sit and talk about why grid guides suck and why advanced television should be much better than it is today. If you ask the TiVo guy at the end to see a map of where TiVos are installed, he'll show you they're on the far right side of the Appalachian Mountains, they're on the far left of the Sierra Mountains. There are a few in the middle, but none any more than 10 miles from a major university. So the people who want advanced television are not the mom and pop in the middle who, when you change anything on the interface, they pick up the phone, they call customer support and say, "Hey, I can't find my TV." And you have to think about that
You're
entire
being
group.
broadcast live on the internet.
And hi, Mom. My family lives there. I grew up there. I understand how it works, but that is really, when you're building a several $100 million MSO, or several billion-dollar MSO and several 100 million customers, you don't think about the Silicon Valley super nerds. So the second screen is this marvelous opportunity to take the people who are dissatisfied, who think that grid guides suck, and I'm among them, but I sell grid guides for a living. So when you have this opportunity to make a very advanced feature, 31% of all internet browsing that happens today in the world happens in front of the television. So we already know that people have some sort of second device in front of them, whether it be a laptop, a tablet, or smartphone, it doesn't matter. We also know that consumers want a very personalized experience. Try to get someone to log into their TV. Not one person has ever done it. We've built all sorts of interfaces to try to figure out who's in front of the TV so that my daughter doesn't see CSI and I don't see Dora the Explorer. It never happens. But you use personal devices, and it's very easy to tap on your picture and say, "This is me." Or you use your cell phone, we know exactly who it is. And by the way, it rings when you lose it in the couch. So we can really make personal experiences. We can make targeted advertising and help pay for the content. And we can make advanced experiences where if we make an advanced experience on the TV, some people are going to be disenfranchised and be like, "I don't get it, it's too hard." But if we make it on the tablet, the advanced users who already happen to have a tablet are all of a sudden satisfied and thrilled, actually, that you did it there. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity. I'm not saying disavow the television. I still think television UI is important. But I think the second screen is a great place to make rapid advancements. It takes, 18 months to roll out a software update on a cable box? You can do it in 3 months on an iPad. So I think it's incredibly important.
Richard, you said you were uncomfortable with that question. You just kind of dove right in. Vic.
I was preempted. I knew that was coming.
Vic, I'd love to hear some of your comments on the same topic. Second screen, where's its role? Any dissent or other opinions that you want to add?
Actually, I completely, strongly agree with the beginning point that it's a phenomenal opportunity. These screens are all sitting in front of us, whether it's the phone, which is now internet connected, whether it's the iPad, whether any other tablet you might have, laptops sitting on our laps, watching television on our laptops. Where I'm going to disagree is I think there's a simpler and maybe even more powerful opportunity, which is simplicity, right? So yeah, I can do all these enhanced things and enhanced GUIs and better searching and all that, but why can't I just pick the next thing we're all going to watch as a family on my iPad and just drop it somewhere so my TV just plays it next, instead of having to think about a converged GUI or... Yeah, exactly. So, again, we keep coming back to simple, 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 because I think that is what's going to get the guy that says, "Where's my TV?" To get to getting that simple. So if
I didn't know this panel was so talented.
But all these devices are there. They're easy to program. They're very, very easy to enhance these experiences. They're all web delivered now. We can push an update in a matter of hours. We try experiments with different classes of people, and really see what sticks and what works, and keep going, innovate. But again, keep it very simple. But know those devices are there, and help people consume with them. Maybe it's a remote control that device is running as. Okay, that's kind of cool. Maybe it's a social experience. Maybe people can watch things synchronized on two different iPads at the same time. There's a lot of interesting, somewhat techie, geeky, complicated things we could do, but I really would love to see something that's just simple. Right?
Simple.
Yeah, so I can actually point y'all to a really interesting company that I came across. I think actually is one of the sponsors here, a company called Peel, right? So these guys essentially, imagine a little device that sits in your home, talks out one end over basically IR to the TV, talks out the other end out of Wi-Fi to your smart device, and literally then connects you up to the cloud to build a personalized experience, control that experience. I mean, it isn't a, hey, we can do this. It's actually being done, not by any of us up here yet, but it's actually there, and I think gaining a lot of popularity very quickly.
Yeah, I think we've got other services out there. I mean, we've got the Rovi Cloud, we've got an SDP service looking to make this available to other devices, because the other challenge, if I'm an operator, is, first of all, am I willing to release my user experience and branding to a third party? Peel gets around that because they have the Fruit, which is an IR blaster.
It is very cute.
And it is, but it's quite expensive too. It's not for everybody. So how can you get apps written by everybody who can write the best possible app, which will help me find the content that I like? And we're all different here. And I think that's the key, is kind of democratizing to some extent the user experience, but doing it in an operator-friendly way.
You know, if I may, I tend to agree with James in that there's a danger to the second screen as much as there is a benefit to it. In that, you know, I was with the CTO of a major MSO a few months ago, and we were talking about the iPad as the second screen, and he was bringing up the irony of the fact that I'm replacing a remote control that cost me what, $137, and the consumer is going out and spending $500 on this brand new remote control, and that's an interesting data point, you know, to take into mind. But the other side of that is every time you tell your consumer to go look at another screen, especially one that is populated with so many other things, it's a mixed message. It's a very competitive thing. It's sort of like if I'm watching CNN on TV and it says, for more on this story, go to CNN.com. There's maybe 5 or 10 channels on TV that I can get real serious news on. I go to the web, I go to CNN.com. Next thing I know, I'm leaving CNN. I'm going off and I'm looking at every other website that's out there, and CNN has lost me as an audience. And they don't want that to happen. We need to have a simpler way to do that within the screen that we have, and not have them avert their eyes to another screen. I mean, we're incorporating iPad ourselves in our environment, and so that we control and for streaming content. But at the end of the day, a major MSO, I think, is going to want them to stay on the TV.
But I think that's a bit of a fool's errand in a way. It's like the early days of the web when you kind of have half the companies, the Yahoos of the world, that were saying, I don't mean that Yahoo like a joke, Yahoo. You had companies like Yahoo, basically, they would link everywhere. They'd say, just go off, do wherever you want, we think you'll come back, right? And that worked. And then we had the other half, which was highly closed down, that wouldn't link to anybody, and effectively that evolution killed those ones off. And I think to say that in the future the MSO is going to even have a wedge of control when I actually have 3 screens around me in the living room, one in my pocket, one in my lap, and one on the wall, I think that's a bit. I think we as an industry need to enable them to get over that fear.
I think what you're saying is that consumers are going to set the use cases no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather use my $500 remote than the $1.37 one that didn't actually get any design thinking in the first place.
Well, I think that the point is that you didn't buy that to be a remote. You have the device, and it now, one of the affordances of that device is that control. But yeah, I mean, I'd agree that essentially, the MSO's ability to control the consumer experience extends only insofar as their ability to negotiate essentially exclusivity for the content that they want to provide and the consumer wants to consume.
As the makers of the best remote I've ever owned, David, what do you want to say on that?
Well, I wanted to go back to a point that Richard made, because I think that there is a danger that the operators have kind of gotten lulled into the fact that there is this opportunity to do a tablet application, and we agree, as one who's done a companion application, great development cycle, a way to not only innovate quickly and try new things quickly, but have a great companion application so you don't always have to be looking at the screen or doing everything with a remote. But this isn't just for the advanced users. I think that it probably is going to stem the tide of some people fleeing the sort of old user experience that they have on the television now, but it's not going to be enough to substitute for a interface on the TV that's going to be easy to navigate and a range of content choices, right? And I think that's, the companion applications will definitely have a role, and that's an important part of it, but it's not a substitute for what is still a very poor television experience.
That's a good point. So, all right, how many people in the room have an iPad? Just curious. So we're typical Americans. How many of you surf your iPad while the TV's on during a show that you consider yourself to be watching? That's about half, maybe even as much as 60% of the room. Actually, if I took out all the non-iPad owners, I'm willing to wager that went up to like 80% of the room. My most recent terrible version of multitasking was me watching a hockey game streaming on the iPad while my kids were watching Caillou before bed on the TV. It was a very meta thing.
Maybe you should follow up and say who was doing something related to the TV show while they were on their iPad, which is a far smaller percentage.
Yeah, the weirdest part was Richard calling me up telling me he knew it was all happening. It was very eerie. So with that, though, I want to... yes, it was. There were uniforms. So the cable industry has traditionally been one we would call fairly closed. For years, we've all, whether it's the government that sort of did it in the 90s, not really, there's been this emphasis that this industry will open up. it seems like with connected TV, we are at the first precipice of that actually happening, when you really can sort of get your own lineup thing kind of happening via Netflix, Hulu, and others. Mike, I'd like you to start off on points of, is the cable industry going to, per your comment you just were making, is there a chance the cable industry is actually going to embrace that, enable that to happen even better? Are they going to fight tooth and nail? What do you think is going to be happening?
I think cable's going to be very absorptive. I think as they're learning very quickly that as these new devices come in, they're not going to. It's sort of my favorite saying. It's going to be judo, not sumo. They will roll with it. They'll include it in their offerings. They'll figure out how to control it and maintain it. I think they will try to tie it in tighter, with everything else they're doing. I think, some of them will say, I'm going to include smart TVs. I don't need a box, for example. I think some of them will take our approach and go more toward the cloud, include everything. They're not going to go away, and I think they have the ultimate control point, and that's the pipe. And whether it's the data side or the video side, that everything else we think about in terms of what we would like to do on a TV or device when it comes to video and entertainment, at the end of the day, we have to, as a business, we have to realize that they're controlling those bits. Whether or not there is network neutrality or not, it's a financial issue, and they're going to make it a financial issue, and they're going to make people that it's not going to be free to come over the top, and that will be a controlling point. So yeah, they will control content that way, and they will manage the experience that way.
Eric?
I think that the cable industry has done a fairly poor job of opening itself up to innovation. I think that one thing it's forgotten is that you need to focus on the consumer before you focus on a business model. I think that they've been focusing on business models way too much. Our friends Mark Zuckerberg and Biz Stone decided to focus on other things when they were developing their products, and I think we see those products now kind of flourishing and developing, and now they're kind of developing business models around that, and now they have rich applications. So I think the cable industry's done a fairly poor job of that. I think what they need to do is to stop innovating in kind of this vacuum and start kind of opening up to other technologies. From TVOT this year compared to TVOT last year, it's absolutely completely different. Last year was EBIF, RFI, now it's ACR. It's automatic content recognition. If you put a typical RFI with a return path for a brochure up against automatic content recognition application, that instantly delivers you that information that you want. I think we all here know what really is the sexy new application and what's really the old kind of, latch on to the business model to try to hang on. So I would encourage the cable industry to not be so complacent when working on these new business models, or I'm sorry, these new consumer-focused products, rather. And I think that's going to be crucial for the cable industry actually surviving. And because the thing is all these connected devices, there are more screens, there are more distractions. It doesn't matter if you own the pipe. If you're not using the pipe, then the pipe means nothing to you. And there's a lot of people that say, and I'm one of them. The cable companies, they own the pipe. And if you're going to put a Roku or a Boxee in your house, you're still using their pipe. But the fact is, you're not using their service. And it's devaluing. And
are just moving across the hallway.
Yeah. And I see that. I'm just saying that right now there is a void of innovation in the cable industry, and I think that there's too much complacency within the interactive TV community for the cable industry, and I think that we've got to keep thinking. And I'm really happy with TVOT this year. I'm glad that we invited a lot of other thinkers into the fold, and I think that we need to continue to do that if this industry is going to survive and grow and flourish.
Yeah, I guess the best way I describe it, right, is the dollars are moving across the hall to some extent, but you're dropping a lot of it along the way, right? The guys that Apple, who's taken 30% off, and the Googles or even the
Wait. You're saying that Apple took 30% of the cable revenues, which hit an all-time high last quarter?
No. Apple takes 30% of the sales that they generate, right? But
because let's be clear, cable customers hit an all-time high last quarter.
Oh yeah. Nobody's confused about that.
Okay.
Cable does their primary business very well, and that is growing subscribers.
Yeah.
The fact is, are they opening up for innovation? I think the answer to that question is clearly right now, not good enough.
I think
I
they
think
are.
yeah,
They are, but it takes time, as we heard earlier on. You
Oh,
can,
yeah,
you can
yeah.
roll out an iOS
Yeah.
app in 3 months. If you want to innovate, I mean, maybe TiVo has an answer. I mean,
Yeah.
innovating on the TiVo guide, it's been the same style for
We
some
made
time.
an
It takes
eBIF
a
app.
while.
It took us a year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think
it's not an eternity.
But I think even saying that they're not innovating isn't exactly accurate with TV. I mean, I can watch on-demand shows from Comcast on my iPad. Whether or not they're embracing open cultures of innovation and allowing everybody to just kind of play in their sandbox, probably not. But I
So
think
let me
Yeah,
kind
please.
of jump on this one as well, because it
Fun
is
grenade.
yes, I'm the former cable guy sitting on the panel, and was involved in early development of cable modem technologies, interactive television, blah blah blah. So at the same time, and cable is a really easy target. We even said, inside the brotherhood, we act really well when our house is on fire. So the question is, for interactive convergence, is the house on fire? I'm not sure it is. Therefore, it's not getting the attention of some of the other issues. But at the same time, it's not just a cable issue. AT&T, Verizon, satellite, all MVPDs have a very similar behavior. So I think if we're going to cast darts, and I'll be the first to throw one, let's toss it at all these guys and try to open this up in innovation and money spent and focus on the customer and really hit the right target.
You can also toss it at the content owners, right? I mean, frankly, they're the ones who are really locking down where their content goes.
Oh yeah, I mean we've had conversations with content owners where we show an application and like, wow, this is absolutely incredible, and can you bring a cable operator to us? Sure. We go talk to a cable operator and he says, well, this is really incredible. Can you bring a content guy to us? Yeah, go down the hall and let's get the other guy and we'll all three sit in the room at once. And it just doesn't seem to go anywhere. But again, it comes back to that, what is the urgency to try to get this done? And I get to wave my hand here and go, next week I've got 30 years in this business. What the hell am I doing? But yeah, no, I'm looking at my retirement schedule, I think is what it is. But it's, it is like watching paint dry sometimes, and I've been in the middle of it from many sides.
David S., you're in charge of this exact type of relationship with these exact type of companies. What are you seeing?
Well, so I agree. I think the cable industry actually is, particularly the larger guys, are innovating in some areas, and they're getting their content, the content you can buy from them, to other devices, which is important to consumers and is definitely a competitive tool. I think what they are not doing is opening up other content sources, the types of content sources that their consumers are already using. So I think any study you read, so probably a quarter of cable subscribers are watching Netflix Instant Watch, right? So they have access to that. Our own research is that nearly 40% of cable subs would like to have an offering that includes internet content on their television, from their operator. And over 60% are willing to switch providers if the other provider made internet content available. So I think, to the point that was just made, there is a very competitive environment. It isn't just the over-the-top choices, but it's telco and it's satellite. And I think, the first to really embrace these content choices and bring it all together in one experience on the television is going to be at a great advantage. Because today, there are lots of over-the-top choices that effectively offer the same catalog, and some are doing better than others because they have a better experience. The cable is the only one that offers the linear content. They're the only ones that package together the premium content, and so they've got a small lead, maybe it's the next 3 to 5 years, to get the overall experience right and the integrated content experience right before they lose that competitive advantage.
The clock's ticking, in my opinion.
All right, so we've been given a few extra minutes. We were given a bit of a reprieve. So back to the original time frame we were expecting to have. So let me ask a question that seems, I have a feeling I'm going to see very different types of answers. So we'll start with just a hand raise. Do you believe that that cord cutting, as defined as existing cable / satellite / etc. subscribers abandoning their cable subscription specifically to adopt OTT services, myth or reality? If you believe that is happening or will ever happen, raise your hands. Panel only, then we'll come to the audience. Audience? All right, new question. I'm assuming if you didn't raise your hand, you think it's a myth, which, by the way, I'm in that camp, so that was a loaded question. But I tried to ask it really nice and even. Here's what I think. Cord never getting. College-age kids, maybe even early 20s, maybe not in college yet. Let's just say that's somewhere in the currently aged 15 to 25-year-olds who have spent a decade getting absolutely free stuff all the time. Will they become cable subscribers? If you think they will, raise your hands.
They'll take the data.
Yeah, they'll take the data.
So the cord never. So you believe the cord. Sorry, let me make sure I phrase that right. If you believe cord never getting is going to actually happen, raise your hands. All right.
Can you clarify that? Is that cord as
If you've got to get your broadband from somewhere. I mean,
we have to
not
come
the
back.
pipe,
We
not
still
the
have to
pipe.
come back to the pipe, though. I mean, but the pipe is a critical issue here. In that, I mean, let's face it. If Netflix comes in and takes away two market points, right? Is cable going to just roll over and say, "Come on in"? No. I mean, they're going to say, "Wait a minute, that pipe cost me money, and someone's going to have to pay a fair share for that." And there will be regulation, yeah, sure, down the road, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. And I have a high respect for the cable guys, and they are very, very shrewd businessmen, and they're going to look at that and they go, "I can throttle that back. I can make my video look a lot better than those other videos." And why wouldn't they? I'd do it.
Will a cable?
It's their business.
To first one to raise hand gets the answer. Will a cable or satellite, etc. co. Well played, Richard.
Jeopardy.
Introduce their own Netflix-like service. So specifically, a paid-for movie on-demand.
They already have.
yeah, we already have people doing it
Yeah.
today. I mean, many of our customers
VOD.
worldwide are doing it.
No. VOD is different.
No,
VOD is you pay for
because
what.
it has a worse
There are
interface?
still some challenges.
I mean specifically, a
yeah. VOD over
Exactly,
the
it's
top,
there
over the open
and better.
internet to
Right, I'm not
set-tops.
sorry. I'm not asking about VOD. I'm asking specifically. I'm Comcast. I'm going to let you unsubscribe from my broadcast feeds and let you subscribe to my movie on demand service. Will that happen?
I think
other
that
words,
takes way too
decouple.
much of a culture
No,
change.
unbundling we're a long way from unbundling.
All
I
right.
think.
Well, I
that's
think
a
what
good
we're seeing
question.
across the board, right, is that the content owners are actually starting to fan out access to their content, right? It's going to YouTube, it's going to Netflix, it's going to Comcast. And so I think over time, they probably will have access to do so. The question is, culturally, right, and do they have the right DNA to
windowing as
embrace
well.
that? And do they have the right data to even know whether or not it makes sense? Yep.
A lot of
Yep.
the status quo has to change an awful lot to make that happen. And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of inertia, whether it's advertising, content release windows, carriage agreements, different we haven't even talked about cross-device rights as well. So
Inertia
Yeah,
that is typically glacial.
I pay for the NHL Game Center package, not the Center Ice package. I get to watch NHL Game Center in my browser or on my iPad, but not on my iPhone and not on the TV. Right, and I at least understand this industry, so I kind of get what happens. Thank goodness my parents don't try to do the same thing. So in our last few minutes, I want to move on to our lightning round, as they would call it. This is our winners and losers in cable's converged future. So I'm going to go through a list of company names, and we'll just do the quick.
And we're not on the list.
do the thumbs up.
I've eliminated. There are no speakers. Other than some as individuals, there are no speakers named on the list. So the question is broad. You can use your own definition to your own view of the world as to whether or not you believe they will be a winner or loser. This is not, there's no bookies here or anything. So, but hopefully someone will record this. It'll go on the internet, and then we'll all be made to look foolish one day. So starting off, I have some softballs and some hardballs in here. So starting off, Apple. So again, not Apple as a company and the iPads and all that. Apple as a player in the converged cable industry. Let's do it this way. If you think they're a winner, raise your hand.
Not under the existing business model. I mean, would I use the Apple
Not in
TV
cable.
to replace my cable box?
Sure.
No.
Yeah,
No.
it's a component, not the
no.
end-all solution.
By the way, do any of you think they'll actually build a TV?
Yes.
They're recruiting people.
They've built a lot of stuff that didn't work.
That's a lot different than a. That's a lot different than a phone.
Another
that-
one, another set-top
Yeah,
box.
who's going to
Next company.
subsidize it?
Next company. Boxy.
No.
No,
No.
Loser.
Google TV.
they'll
No.
try many times.
Yes.
Loser.
Who was the yes? Sean, you were a yes. Any other yeses?
They don't have to make money. Like they literally don't have to make money with it. How can you lose?
They don't even. They don't need TV. What do they
Like,
need? What do they need us
the
for?
best quote.
Are you a shareholder?
Yes. But a guy named Anthony Rose, former BBC, described Google strategy, both with Google TV and Android, as a brilliant strategy. They found a really crowded room, throw a grenade in, come in the next day and clean up the parts. It's really that simple.
And then show an ad. Also,
on Google TV, as long as
quick.
Google TV, in my opinion, similar to Boxy, as long as they're a box, I think it doesn't survive. I think if it moves into being the cloud and available everywhere, it's a whole different story.
Will Google TV be the OS of the living room?
Replay what I just said, right? If they do that.
Well,
then
I
they
want
could-
yes, no's.
No.
No.
Will Android be the OS of the living room?
No.
No.
All right. Netflix?
Nope.
Interesting.
Wait,
Hulu.
can I throw an interesting one in there?
Yeah, I'd love
for
it.
Something for everybody to kind of think about. So Hastings had a lot of good sort of nuggets in his Q1's earnings report, but I think one that most people didn't pick up on was he actually dropped that he expects Netflix over time to become a discovery engine. And I don't think anybody really picked up on that, in that he expects over time people to come to Netflix to find content that's not available on Netflix. And exactly.
But, but they're not going to compete with the cable. It's okay.
Yeah, what is available
They
on
already
Netflix?
said they're not going to compete.
Good
Don't
point.
worry. Not going to happen. That's never changed. Did I say Hulu? Hulu?
No.
I'm not sure their investors even want them to succeed.
I actually, you know what? I would not. That's a very interesting comment. I have a friend who's on the banking side of the world, and for 2 years now, before they were starting to make bucket loads of money, he said, "You watch, you'll see them do a lot of interesting stuff, but there's a lot of people behind them that don't necessarily support them. So keep an eye on that." Roku.
No.
No.
Poor Roku. Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
I love them, but no.
Yeah. Does Yahoo have a shot at being a major player?
If
No.
they're in business in a couple of years, yes. Maybe.
Look, they're a top 5 internet destination. It's not like they're just going to belly up and leave.
Well, bold
Well,
predictions.
Lycos as an OS or as a point of media?
I meant Yahoo mostly. I actually intended the
Email is
question
very
as-
sticky.
Do you mean the
I
OS?
intended Yahoo as an OS on TVs.
Well, if we
It's
said
actually-
no for Google, then it's definitely no for Yahoo.
All right. Microsoft not including Xbox.
Microsoft as a set.
Who knows what those geniuses are up to in their lab?
Excel.
I don't think they're certainly innovating much in the space.
They're making a slight retreat.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they're really focusing on OS. Sorry, they're really focusing on OS and Office products. They're trying to rebuild their business that they understand before they branch back out. So yes, they're contracting, not growing at this time.
Yeah, Microsoft has made money in 2 categories, and those are the 2. Everything else has just been a loser. And from a guy who used to work for one of the founders, yeah.
Yeah, even Xbox is kind of big.
It's, yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
all right,
As
so
somebody
that's
who's
my next
bumped into
one.
Microsoft and opportunities, yeah, they're not retreating.
Let's move to
Their
the
focus has changed, let's put it that way.
next one on a related note. Xbox as a player in the connected living room.
I think it's the greatest Trojan horse in history. It is absolutely teaching an entire generation of our age people how to engage with connected TV. So it has absolutely been imperative to making this even a category. I mean, it is huge, but long term, they're going to have to really change their strategy. Most people our age have no idea that you can watch ESPN in a much better way on your Xbox than you can on your cable company, on your cable box. It is a better experience. It is a rich, dynamic experience for a whole lot of content. But so it's teaching people, but they haven't really. Their DNA is such that they have not told people this is what it does, and it does it in a lot of ways better than playing games. So,
Xbox owners? How many of you?
And I agree with Richard. I think AT&T is a little upset about it, but yeah.
But I mean, why do you buy an Xbox? Where's the what? Yes, exactly.
But not
So-
to watch the game. That's the thing,
Exactly.
you know.
So where does the real value?
Well, but
even-
let's be
even-
clear. There's 58 million of them. It's
Oh,
not like-
I'm a PS3 guy personally, but
Sorry.
I haven't been watching much recently. Yeah.
Case in point. But
Haven't seen you online in a while. I didn't really get a group verdict. Xbox as a player in the Converged living room, winner or loser?
Winner.
Loser.
I think they got a shot.
That's it. I like that. That was the most divided I think we've been. So now on to does the PlayStation have the equal shot as the Xbox?
no.
What was the question?
Sony's
Does the
too busy with
PlayStation
too
have
much
the-
stuff.
Took a PR
Does-
hit.
Now remember, Sony thinks they're going to become a cable company. Sony thinks that the cord never getters, 10% of them are going to Sony. That's Sony's belief. Do you guys disagree?
It's the #1 selling Blu-ray player in history, but that's it. They have not done a great job of bringing rich content into their network. They've been almost as exclusive as Apple as to how people get on. They position their own things much higher than everybody else's content, and they have done this typical Sony left hand not talking to the right hand of, how do we bring everybody in and how do we make this a great experience? And then, of course, they got hacked, which just ruined their brand.
And everything's really
Is there
expensive.
Any
that they
dissent?
make.
I think I'm hearing that side. Is there anyone who thinks Sony's a dark horse, major good play?
Do you have
good
another
player?
device that hasn't yet appeared on the market yet? I mean, that's could another disruptive device come out there? I mean, we've all been talking about iPads, but I think operators need to be ready for the next device that comes out. We're seeing new generations of hardware. There could be a game-changing device that could come out.
You think it'll come from Sony?
No.
Okay, last two, and then that'll wrap up. 3 companies, then it wraps up the round. Amazon, as a player in the space, they have a customer billing relationship. They have access to content. They're allowed to stream it to you.
They know Kindle. They know retail. They know,
Whether or not they build a device or get their stuff inside other people's, what do you guys? Can they be a force?
Yep.
Do they want to?
Yeah, that's an even
Yes.
better question.
I mean, I think they're in the content distribution business today. How many people here have bought or streamed, unboxed, or just generally used Amazon as a content provider in
Or
some way?
packaged media, perhaps.
And so hands up one more time. How many of you are happy with Amazon as a content provider relationship type? Would you keep doing it? So most hands stayed up. Just so you know, most hands stayed up.
It seems they're really good at selling and not really good at user experience yet. So they're going to have to change their DNA a little bit. It has to feel a little more Apple-like or a little bit more just touch it and it works sort of, Today there's too many middle stages between their content and where you want to watch it.
They used to want to just sell books. So now last two in reverse order. So satellite companies, as we know them today, are they going to stick around? Are they going to make it through the next age?
I think they are. I mean, if we widen the net a little broader here, I heard a stat the other day that there's not enough copper on the planet to wire the world up. So there's going to be room for satellite players for some time.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, between the if you will, the AT&T and Verizon of the IP delivery concept, satellite and cable, I think all three are going to compete. They've actually been very good for cable, and the fact that they've eroded their base a little bit, but cable's learned to compete and provide better service and some better offerings. But it took a hit upside the back of the head with a nice big bat to get them, to realize that there's competition in the world, and they've responded to that. And again, it goes back to a little bit of the house being on fire. Before it was just cable. Now they're very serious about trying to run a business and satisfy customers, doing what they can to do that. Can it always be better? Sure. United Airlines can be better too, but
I think what's going to be difficult for them is the pipe and the internet connection, which is going to start to carry more and more of the content and ultimate video on demand, getting to wherever I want to go. That's something satellite's just not suited for. So I think that's what's going to make their life difficult.
Do you guys? I had heard an interesting one of those weird rumors. Do you guys think that either Dish or DirecTV, just talking U.S. for a second because the world's too complex, but Dish or DirecTV, could either of them survive in an OTT world where it's simply their brand direct to a connected TV or an Xbox or another type of device, assuming they had all the rights, assuming they somehow got there? Could their brands make it in that play?
If they can jump over the pipe issue, yes. I mean, I think they have a very strong brand. They have a national brand. I mean, you look at the cable guys. I mean, Charter's brand is strong. Well, strong is an interesting word, but Charter's brand is there within their franchise district, but you go outside, no one knows who Charter is. But DirecTV and Dish has a national brand. Dish just brought Blockbuster, and I think they're going to get Netflix to run for the money, in that regards. And I think they will come out strong and provide an over-the-top service themselves. I think they're already doing it to some extent. And, I think if they can get over the pipe issue, they'll be there.
I think short one, Richard.
I think all of them are trying to do that, right? That's what Comcast wants to do, is they want to extend beyond their copper footprint. That's what Time Warner wants to do, is extend beyond their copper footprint with great apps, great content, and over-the-top delivery. So you'll see Time Warner trying to deliver the Time Warner on-demand app or the Time Warner streaming television app well beyond Time Warner's.
That's when Armageddon
Current
let loose, though. I mean,
Yeah.
as soon as the first big guy, Comcast or Time Warner, sends programming, if Comcast sends programming into New York City, that's war. And they've been sort of at a, we're not going to do it.
And
Yeah,
how
we're not
long
gonna
from
do
now
it.
will it happen?
I don't know.
It-
I don't know. Maybe, I don't think it's this year or next year, but
But it can't be never, right?
it can't be never. But I mean, I think we all agree when that happens, it's going to be chaos.
Paywalls are arbitrary anyway. I'm sorry, not paywalls. Excuse me. Content walls are arbitrary.
Absolutely, and then it's going to
so,
get to content.
you know.
Then it'll get to content, rights. What have I negotiated? And it's going to be a scale issue then.
All right, last one again in our free-for-all style here for the last question. So the cable industry obviously is the 3 million pound gorilla, whatever term you're going to use. In fact, you could pretty easily argue that it's going to take tremendous energy to unseat them at what they're doing, because inertia and good enough is good enough. So, want y'all to predict if things went miraculously poorly for the cable industry. How many years do they have at their current game before major change in consumers' homes? You got to get beyond. You got to get to some of the flyover states. You got to hit.
At least
you don't have to
five.
hit. You don't have to hit all the states, but you have to hit some.
If
of
they
them.
screw it all up, at least 5.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's at least 5.
But they'd have to really screw it up.
Monumentally.
Yeah.
The customer
To get
services
to
perfect
only
storm
5,
of
right,
everything.
yeah. If they have screwed up, they'll get
customer service is
Alright,
improving
alright.
with
Yeah,
competition, so I
it-
think it's going to take
but,
a long time.
But I'd say, yeah, I mean, screwing it up means doing nothing, right? Because we're already getting the content owners, right? The content producers are already trying to run effectively a wild auction for their content, right? They're shipping it out to everybody they can, and so it will require proactive effort, not a sit back and do nothing to protect your kingdom.
So okay, so they do nothing. How long they got?
I'd agree with everybody else. 5+.
5+. Anyone think longer? I think inertia they've got a decade plus personally, but
As long as ESPN has to pay $1 billion a year to the NFL,
Yeah.
they got cable.
Yeah.
That's
Cable
that's
pays
the
the
thing.
bills.
Yeah,
These
cable
other
pays
guys
the
are
bills.
just
Absolutely.
in the single-digit percentage.
CNN gets 50 cents a sub a month.
ESPN gets 6 though.
Yeah, that is not going to go away. I mean, that's too much money. It's just part of the ecosystem that's there, and you have to break up not just cable. You have to break up the entire ecosystem, and that's a much more difficult thing to do.
But we're already-
gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for the time and the lively discussion. You guys did great.